afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to be here. As Jason said, my name is Jamie Twiss, and I think I've been working in data and technology for since the beginning of my career 4 years ago, because I'm 26 years old. The two jobs I have that are most relevant to this probably being the chief data officer at Westpac, and then now running a fintech that works in financial services and does a lot of kind of big data aggregation. And so I've worked with developers and data scientists and data engineers and people sort of all along that spectrum really for, 20, 25 years now. And I guess I don't have any slides, but I have a few things that might be helpful from my own experience and things that I've observed, both as someone building my own career and then as someone who hires lots of, at this point, more sort of CTOs and CDO types, but kind of familiar up and down, kind of all different levels of seniority around devs in particular. And so the first thing I want to say, I agree with Nick's overall messages. So AI absolutely is going to be transformative. I'd say it's been transformative-ish to date, but it's still very, very early days. Bigger changes are coming. But I also think it's going to be okay. And I think if you take nothing else away from anything that I say over the next 10, 15 minutes, the number one thing I want you to do is relax and kind of just lean into the idea that it will be okay. And the reason I say this is not because I have a crystal ball and I know what AI is going to do to software. Obviously I don't. I don't think anybody does. And I think most people are trying to kind of talk I find there's a strong inverse correlation between how confidently someone talks about the disruptive effect of AI and how much they actually understand about what's happening and what's being disrupted. So none of us know what's going to happen. What I will say is this: if you look at most transformations where you have a highly disruptive change in a market, whether that's caused by technology or anything else, if you look back after it's happened, and you look back at where we were before that happened, it often feels unimaginably different. So if you talk to kind of a old accountant, like maybe 70-year-old accountant, those people started before people had computers on their desks, and there were people whose job it was to a spreadsheet was originally a spread out sheet of paper. See what they did there? That's where the name comes from. And the people who just manually kind of went through and kind of did the calculations. I mean, almost impossible to imagine now, but at the time that was just the way things happened. And when VisiCalc came out in the early 80s, and people realized what a spreadsheet was, we had a sort of a miniature version of AI panic just within kind of some professions where spreadsheets were extremely useful, including accounting. And everybody said at the time, accounting as a profession is dead. What do we need all these people for? No one is going to be adding things up by hand. Well, they were right that no one was going to be adding up things by hand, but of course we have just as many accountants as we did then, actually slightly more. It's just the nature of what they do has completely changed. And there are a few exceptions to this, but in general, when there's a big technological disruption that dramatically increases the productivity of a certain job, 98% of the time, we just do more of that thing. So this is absolutely true with, more broadly, the rise of the personal computer, the rise of the internet and networking. This is true with electrification of the economy in the 1920s. So it's not, it's true with the Industrial Revolution. It's not that we didn't have people weaving cloth. It's that they were doing it in factories instead of at their home, and we were using a lot more cloth. And early days, but my impression, and we use quite a bit of AI where I work, is that that's what we're doing now. So we are probably writing 100 times as many lines of code. Overall, like 95% of that stuff gets thrown away because it's just sort of exploratory or not very good or what have you. And if we had to, we could probably make do with fewer people, but actually what we're doing is we're just doing a lot more. We're building things faster, we're building them better, we're trying different stuff, we're prototyping to run A/B tests with live code in a way we wouldn't have even 3 years ago. So I guess that to me is kind of the biggest change that's coming through AI that I can see, and obviously, like everybody else, I can only see forward a small distance, which is that we're probably going to do more. We'll do it differently. I think it's highly unlikely that there are, that we have 90% job losses in software engineering. It just history shows very few examples of that. Now, I said I'd talk about the exceptions. The exception is when there becomes a different way of doing things that doesn't involve the people who used to do it before, right? And so an existing job class just gets completely bypassed by a new way of doing things. So that Industrial Revolution thing about weaving cloth is probably pretty close, because the ability to weave on a loom was not relevant to the ability to work in a factory. That's what happened to travel agents. So it's not that kind of amazing tools became available to travel agents and they became more productive. We just found that actually there was a self-serve way of doing things, and just travel agents as a whole completely got bypassed. And arguably with AI, there are some job families where I think there's a higher risk of this. So, Nick was talking about people who do hand-drawn animation. That might be an example of that, early to say. But software development, data science, data engineering, those do not fall into that category. AI-powered software, AI-powered development is not done by a whole different group of people that have grown up with a different set of skills and kind of, do things. It's not that it's a different group of people and that kind of traditional dev skills are irrelevant. It's that people who have been devs, they're a bit like the accountants who have been doing things by hand or are now doing things first on a calculator and then on a computer. It's tooling that makes all of you much more productive, much more effective, and yes, of course, you will have to adapt to the new ways of doing things, and the expectations for how much you can do in what period of time will be much higher. But I honestly think for many people, of course, we're thinking about the future, but I think for many people, the actual experience of going through it will be surprisingly smooth, because these changes actually take 10 to 15 years. I gave a speech a few weeks ago about the rise of the personal computer, and again, to actually see how that flowed through into productivity and how we rewired the economy and society around the PC took about 15 years. So I took about from the early 80s to about the mid 90s before we really understood how computers drove productivity through better logistics and kind of inventory management, how you could connect computers to take waste out of the supply chain, and all these things that no one could see coming in the early 80s. So I think it'll take 10 to 15 years for AI to really work through the way that we do software development. And as a result of that, that's a long time. And we're all trying to look forward 10 years. And if you look forward 10 years, it feels very science fiction and crazy. But when you live through 10 years, humans adapt to an extraordinary amount of change in a slow period of time. If you look back 10 years, I went to a conference and somebody built a website using 2006 technology. And I was around for that. I remembered it. But at the same time, I thought, this feels like stone tools. I can't believe we ever did this. But I didn't really notice it going away. Just gradually, one day after the other, you move on to new and different and better things. And I think that's actually, that analogy of building websites in 2006, I think is actually a pretty good way of looking forward from where we are. So people who were building websites in 2006, that job class, that type of work doesn't really exist anymore. You don't have people actually kind of writing, God, what were we writing them in then? I can't even remember what way to write them in now. But those people didn't sort of get pushed out of the workforce and kind of become unemployed and destitute. Because it happened at a certain pace, those people just kind of either evolved more into sort of web designer type capabilities, or they moved out of sort of that they moved into sort of like the back end of the front end, if you will. And they started building apps, and they started doing kind of more website coding, but it wasn't sort of that sort of more kind of very front end kind of sort of HTML kind of CSS type stuff. So I hope that's somewhat reassuring. Now, it will change, and I think all of you no doubt already, again, as Nick said, the fact that you're here probably means you guys are closer to the front of the pack than the back of the pack on this adaptation. But I think any dev, any kind of software engineer, data scientist who just kind of arms folded refuses to engage with sort of the modern emerging tool set, I don't think that's a path to success. again, I don't think those people are kind of showing up at sessions like this one. So you will need to adapt to it. But in terms of cautions, I'd actually caution you more on the other side. So my experience as developers think about AI, they kind of fall into two broad categories. I'd say the panicky, which is what I've just been talking about, and reassure you there, and then the massively overconfident. Because I think the biggest risk to your individual career as we move into what will be a very different future over the coming years is not that we won't have devs, not that you won't be able to make the transition. I can already see people who are over-reliant on what they think the future will look like and are actually either not building or allowing the core skills around coding, development, software, data, allowing those skills to atrophy. So my son's a uni student studying computing, and there are a lot of people there who get 100 on every take-home assignment and fail all the exams, right? People who are taking it home, and they're like, oh, it's fine, I'll be fine with AI. And for those of you that have worked on kind of industrial grade software development in the workplace, you probably have seen or have used a fair bit of AI, but I think you also know that AI writes code, it doesn't build robust software, right? And I'm not sure if it ever will. In the same way that you can probably get AI to write a novel, I don't think AI is going to write a great novel. I don't think AI is going to build and design amazing software, because software is so much more than just writing the code. And it kind of, again, I'm quoting Nick so much, I should probably send him a check after the speech, but he was talking about kind of the T-shaped career. That's what AI will really struggle with. It's that commercial acumen. It's the ability to understand what are we actually trying to achieve here, and how is that going to flow through a commercial problem, through to a product design, through to a technical design, through to actual software. I think that's much more where software development is going. The same way that accounting moved from let's manipulate these numbers to let's think about how these numbers fit together in a broader financial picture to let's think about a strategic question that we can answer through the use of accounting and financial bookkeeping. So I think that'd be my first caution to you guys. It's not that AI is going to kind of destroy the industry or destroy your career. It's more that I think there are some people who are at risk of not leaning into that core understanding of what software is and how code really works. And instead, I see this already, people who kind of vibe code these things that look amazing, but they're actually not quite right, and they're not very maintainable, and no one really understands the code, and the data structure is sloppy, and the way it executes isn't very efficient, and it's not actually secure by design. I think that's the biggest risk people have, is they think we've solved these problems with AI tooling, and as a result, their job is done, and all they really have to do is write some prompts, and then knock off and watch Netflix for the rest of the afternoon. That's not true. I think you really still want to keep that fundamental kind of understanding of coding of software, and over time, that will evolve into something new. But don't kind of jump into the future too early. Would be my very strong advice. I think the other thing that I would say is, depending on where you are in your career, as you're thinking about your current role and your next role and so on, I think, and this has been an issue since well before AI, I find people with technical skills often are very focused on the technical requirements of the role. And of course that will be enough usually to get you the job. But to the extent that if I think about people that I work with, I think that person is going places. I mean, yes, people who are fantastic at coding, at software, people who can use AI in a really thoughtful, integrated way with software, yes, that is valuable. But the people who are really going somewhere are the people who can, as they rise up, really sort of have that broader view of the world. And people who understand how what they're doing connects to a broader commercial problem or whatever the nature mission of your organization is as well. And I find people are spending the marginal hour kind of really trying to kind of like just kind of really say that I'm competent at Ruby. It could be helpful, but I think putting that extra bit of emotional energy, that extra bit of time, and understanding So what's the actual problem that this piece of software is solving, and do I have a point of view on that? And if you have that capability and you're technical, that is solid gold. That is solid gold in any organization. The ability to link the technical side of what you're doing, the software you're writing, the code you're writing, to the broader context in which it's operating. The rarest talent in the world is the talent that can bridge the technical and non-technical worlds. And so I'd encourage you to spend as much time as you can thinking about the broader context in which you're working, whether that's this role or the next role. Then I think the final thing I'd say, and this is probably more relevant earlier in your career, because I think this gets beaten out of everybody sooner or later. Show up on time. If I think about the people that have worked out well versus people that have not worked out well at the different places that I've worked, it's extremely rare that we hire a dev who just sort of can't write code, right? It never happens. But if I think about people who don't work out and kind of we move them on, 80% of the time it's either people who kind of can't get along with anybody, or on the work from home days they actually don't work, or if they're supposed to be there at 9, they're there at 10:15. Like, and I know it sounds stupid and it's obvious, but actually that's what blows up people's careers in the first sort of 5 to 10 years. It's just not being reliable and not showing up. So I support all of the thinking about the future of AI. I think the much greater risk statistically, if I look at the people in this room, the next 10 of you who will get fired, I doubt any of those firings will have anything to do with AI, unless it's you guys phoning in bad code because you're using Claude and you think you're getting away with it and nobody can notice. It's far more likely to be kind of just all the normal stuff around a job, which somehow seems to kind of like often kind of vanishes in importance. I think particularly around kind of devs, kind of there are often these sort of little subcultures that sort of have a different view as to how these things should work. And it's kind of cranky middle-aged guys like me who are making these decisions, and like we're cranky middle-aged guys, and we want people to show up on time, and we want them to wear shoes in the office, and we don't want them to put their gym clothes in the freezer because they didn't want to take them home and they were going out that night. True story. So like that's actually kind of the thing that I think is actually probably the greatest risk to each of you over time. So I think in summary, AI is coming, it will change everything, it'll probably be okay. Please don't neglect the technical foundations of what you actually do. Don't kind of assume AI bails you out of everything. There's a reason your job is still hard and it should be hard. Show up on time, wear shoes, don't put your gym clothes in the freezer. And then if you can link what you do all day to the broader context in which you are operating in your organization, that is solid gold, and you will go very, very far indeed. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.